On a stormy day, a collision with a truck at an intersection caused our hero, Minato, to fall into a coma for 6 months. After 203 days, he woke up for the first time, as though he had been reborn. The accident caused him to lose his memory, particularly all the years from middle school. He had completely forgotten that he played water polo, even though he had won the national championship with a crushing victory. However, his joy was short-lived, because on the very same day, he had the accident. More than half a year passed, and now, as he wakes up, he doesn't even recognize his teammates and friends in the sport. He completed his rehabilitation and returned home after all this time. His parents were overjoyed to have him back safely, and his mother especially felt guilty about the accident, blaming herself. But Minato held no grudge toward her. Deciding to return to the sport, he rushed into it. However, when he saw a photo from the day he won the championship, he realized that he was far from the skill and physical fitness needed to be a professional again. This soured his mood, and he decided to take a walk around his neighborhood. There, something caught his attention, a picture of his former friends whom he had forgotten. He was surprised and astonished to see that they had won their first championship in high school. After reading the magazine, he turned to the next page and was struck by the beauty of a girl named Chino. His heart nearly stopped as a guy approached him, invading his personal space. He was the type to cling to others, and he started babbling about looking for him after he left the hospital. His name was Ataru, and he kept trying to help him regain his memory, but he was unsuccessful. He asked him directly about the name of the high school he attended, and that's when Minato realized he had to finish his studies. He was a year behind his classmates. He went back home and began studying the required materials for the entrance exam. At the dinner table with his family, he told them that he had given up on water polo, and they pretended to support him. But Minato could tell that his parents were surprised by his decision. After finishing his meal, he went to his room, but only a few hours later he heard his sister screaming from her room, still haunted by nightmares, especially the day of the accident. At that moment, Minato realized that not only was he stuck in his own memories from when he was in 6th grade, but his family was also stuck on that day. He knew he had to change something. He set up a strict schedule, balancing his rehab with preparing for the high school entrance exams. He managed to join a school, but it wasn't the same as his middle school, it was the one next to it. But that was fine because he wasn't going to play water polo anymore. However, there was one addition. Bikini Ataru followed him to the school as well, and it seemed like it would be 3 long years ahead of him. He managed to escape him and went to his class, but the guests kept arriving because a senior named Joe, who was a year older, was inviting students to join the water polo club. Joe was frustrated by the students here, as they followed their emotions and weren't really interested in joining the club. With no other choice, he grabbed his things and left the class. But then, he noticed Minato and kept staring at him. The poor boy tried to hide, avoiding Joe's gaze. It happened in the hallway, and as he descended the stairs, Joe stuck to him and wouldn't let him go. Minato knew he couldn't deny this identity, and he tried to run away. But Ataru told Joe the truth, that Minato was a professional water polo player, which caused a long chase around the school. Minato ran and reached the neighboring school and hid behind one of the trees. There he saw Chino, the girl who had captured his heart with her beauty. She came close and grabbed his necktie, kissing his cheek without warning. His feelings were a mix of happiness and fear. Why was she getting so close? What was the reason? Chino was trying to confirm if he had really lost his memory. However, she didn't expect that he had even forgotten how to play water polo. Minato was in a different world now, thinking Chino might be his girlfriend or something like that. But that wasn't true. This was actually the 3rd time she had spoken to him. The first time was at a pool, and the second time was when he confessed his feelings to her. But she rejected him. But back then, and to make things more interesting, they made a bet. If he won the national championship, she would kiss him. But if he lost, he would have to give her 100,000 yen. The good news is that Minato won, and Chino kept her promise. That's why she kissed him. But that's not the point. Chino was upset, deeply upset, with Minato for not returning to water polo after being such a talented player. The scene ends there, and in the next, we see Minato sprinting as fast as he came to tell Joe that he's joining the club. What changed? What happened between them that we didn't see? It turns out Chino revealed that there was more to the bet. Minato had fulfilled the first part of the deal, but the second part required him to become the best water polo player in high school. If he managed that, she promised to date him. If he failed, however, he would owe her 200,000 yen. There was no backing out now. Not after Chino had already kissed him. That meant he was halfway there. But the bigger disaster came the following school day. The entire school found out that Minato had once won the national championship. Joe, of course, took full advantage of the situation by spreading posters everywhere. A crowd gathered outside the water polo club, eager to join. Minato, however, addressed them, saying, "That was a thing of the past. Right now, my muscles have withered because of the accident, and I don't even remember how to play. So don't raise your expectations of me." That one sentence was enough to turn most of them away and change their minds. Except those two new members. The tall and bulky one was named Yutaka. The other, shy to the point where his voice was barely audible, was Yoshi. They followed Joe into what he called the club room, which turned out to be a swimming pool covered with a thick blue tarp to keep it warm year-round. Joe had even built a wooden cabin in the bathroom nearby. It was impressive. Joe had effectively revived the club after it had been dormant for 10 years. With 7 members now, Joe was close to his goal, but they still needed 2 more players. That's when someone entered from outside, a player who had been eavesdropping. He introduced himself as Taki and requested to join as the goalkeeper. However, it wasn't that simple. Joe himself was the current goalkeeper and had been training for the position all this time. To resolve this dispute, they decided on a competition, a penalty shootout. Each would take turns as goalkeeper, and whoever lost would forfeit the position. Minato was chosen to take the shots, even though there was a risk he might not even be able to throw the ball properly. Despite this, he accepted the challenge. Ataru couldn't help but notice how Minato's muscular build had completely faded, unlike Taki, who had a fit, athletic body, unsurprising for a former baseball player. Summoning his courage, Minato jumped into the freezing pool. Holding the ball, his body seemed to remember the sport. But that spark of excitement was fleeting. His first throw was amateurish, almost like a child's. Joe easily blocked it, proving his skill. Then it was Taki's turn. When he failed to block a single shot, Joe retained his spot as goalkeeper. For Taki, this loss meant he was ready to leave the club entirely. He assumed there was no place for him in the team, but the others quickly intervened. They explained his mistake, underestimating the sport and overestimating his abilities. Taki had joined the club with hidden motives, assuming water polo would be an easy sport where he could shine. He couldn't have been more wrong. They gave him a motivational talk, asking him what he had to lose by staying. Perhaps with time and effort he could master the sport, and even excel at it. Thankfully, Taki was persuaded by their earnest, if somewhat cheap pep talk, and decided to stay. But one problem remained. They were still 1 number short. That's when Taki mentioned he had his sights set on someone famous. A professional, and a very talented one at that. An athlete specializing in the 100-meter dash. His name was Emi. Minato was chosen to try and recruit Emi to the club, but Emi refused outright, stating he had no motivation to return to swimming. The team moved on to their next plan, trying to convince him indirectly by showing up wherever he went. However, this only irritated Emi, and he eventually asked Minato and the others to stop bothering him. Joe, however, wasn't ready to give up on his dream, which was now so close to becoming a reality. He persisted stubbornly until Yutaka intervened and shared his own story. Yutaka explained that, being the tallest among his peers, everyone had always placed high expectations on him. They assumed he would excel at any sport because of his height, but that assumption became a heavy burden for him. When he heard Nanato's earlier comments about losing his memory and how no one should pin their hopes on him, Yutaka realized Minato was the kind of teammate he wanted to learn from. Although Yutaka's heartfelt words didn't have an immediate impact on Emi, they did plant a seed of doubt in his resolve. Eventually, Emi proposed a way to end the matter once and for all, a competition. It would be a 150-meter race. Emi would swim solo, while the 6 club members would swim in a relay, each taking 25 meters. Minato, recognizing Emi's speed and the team's relative inexperience, suggested a compromise, giving the team a 20-second head start. The group quickly got to work measuring their speeds and creating a plan to improve, but it all seemed futile. They were still 2 seconds behind Emi's time. Ataru proposed a simple strategy. If each swimmer could shave off 2 seconds from their individual times, they would have a chance to win. With that in mind, they trained tirelessly, pushing themselves to break their personal records as the race day approached. When the big day finally arrived, the race began. The team dived in, and the clock started ticking. 20 seconds later, Emi entered the water, swiftly closing the gap. The intensity rose as the race heated up, culminating in Minato taking the final leg for his team. Despite showing flashes of his former skill, Minato couldn't overcome Emi's incredible speed. The race ended with Emi narrowly winning by 1/4 of a second. This meant one thing. It was over. Emi wouldn't be joining the club.